Georgetown, Kentucky, with another episode of Bookends. This time, we're going to talk about novels, about libraries and librarians, and there are a lot to choose from. What is it that's so special about libraries and librarians? Well, they're fascinating topics. Libraries are repositories of all of the knowledge that we have in our world, and they're also community gathering places, and so they make a great setting for a novel. Our first book that we're going to talk about today, which is one of four new releases that I have to talk about that are about libraries or librarians, is called The Personal Librarian, and it's a very popular book right now. It's by Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray, and this is a novelization of the true story of Belle DaCosta Green, who was the personal librarian for financier J.P. Morgan. And this fascinating story details how Green amassed a world-class collection of rare manuscripts, books, and artwork for the Pierpont Morgan Library. Poised, educated, and intelligent, Green held one secret that she dared not divulge. She was Black, and in order to keep her job and status in the wealthy social circle in which she moved in the time period, she had to pass as white. So this is her story. It's a novelization. Some of it they had to craft because she burned a lot of her personal papers before she died. So, but it's a fascinating story. It tells about her background and her education and all of the fascinating places that she went and the artworks that she collected for J.P. Morgan. So I highly recommend it. It's very interesting. Our second book details just how important libraries are to their local communities. And this novel is called The Last Chance Library by Freya Sampson. And it's about a librarian named June Jones, who is shy and introverted, but when her beloved library is faced with closure, she is forced out of her shell and into the center of a community protest. With a band of eccentric locals, she comes to her library's defense. Together, they learn what it takes to stand up for what is wonderful about the community in which they live. And this book, The Last Chance Library, brings up a topic that it is a worry for many libraries worldwide, and that is funding. What happens and what you do when your funding gets cut off. And how communities have to band together to save their libraries. So I highly recommend this book. It's a good read. The Last Chance Library by Freya Sampson. Our next book, another new release, is called Murder at the Lakeside Library by Holly Danvers. And it's a cozy mystery. It's set in Lofty Pines, Wisconsin, as a young widow returns to her family's summer lakeside cottage after years away, and thinking she's going to have a quiet summer of reflection, she finds instead that the Lakers, who are long-term summer cottage residents of the area, are counting on her to open up her mother's cottage library. And she definitely wasn't counting on finding a body during the first meeting of the summer library staff. Now she and her summer library staff have to help the police find out who done it. So if you like cozy mysteries and you like the summer cottage atmosphere, you will love this book. It's a quick read, it's a fun read, I recommend it. And here's one that will make you think. This was one of the favorite ones that I read this time. It's called The Midnight Library. It's a new release by Matt Haig. And it's about a woman who's, I think she's about 30-something. She finds herself caught between life and death. And she finds herself in a library full of books detailing all of the possible paths that she could have chosen in her life, but she didn't. So she has the opportunity to experience several missed pathways and to possibly choose one to live out as a normal lifespan. and she learns a lot about what is really meaningful to her in her life. And I think that in her state that she's in between life and death, that her soul and her brain create a library in her own mind and staff it with a librarian that was a very helpful person to her during her younger years. So she has that person to kind of bounce ideas off of. But she experiences a bunch of different lives, a bunch of different ways that her life could go, and then she has to choose which one is going to work for her, and choose whether she wants to live or to not live. And really makes you think, this book. So I highly recommend it, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And next we've got some older releases, but they're still good reads. We've got The Summer Hours at the Robbers Library by Sue Halpern. A middle-aged woman named Kit has come to Riverton to take a job at the library and to hide away from the scars of her past. You find out kind of about what went on in her past as the novel goes along. They don't tell you everything in the beginning, but it kind of jumps between time periods. She hopes for a solitary life in her new position as librarian, but a local teenager named Sunny helps to bring her out of her shell. And another thing about, another novel kind of about how you wish sometimes that your life had taken a different pathway, and what you can do to change your life when you need to. So highly recommend that. And this one, if you're in the mood for a fantasy about libraries, this was one of my very favorites that I read this time. It's called The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwood. It is a fantasy novel, and it involves a human soul named Claire, who upon her death finds herself in hell as the head librarian of the Unwritten Wing, which is a massive library full of all the books that have never been written. So sometimes the characters from these unwritten books escape, and so Claire occasionally has to visit Earth to retrieve them. And in this novel, Claire the librarian enlists the help of her assistant, the Muse Brevity, a somewhat roguish character from an unwritten novel called Hero, and a shy young demon named Leto, who must quest through various times and places on Earth to find a very dangerous manuscript that could destroy the entire world. Unfortunately, some very unfriendly angels are also after this manuscript and will do anything to get it away from them. So, an adventure, a fantasy, full of very likable characters. I highly recommend it. The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwood. And then, this was, I laughed out loud with this one. This one is so funny. It's called The Case of the Missing Books, and it is kind of like a cozy mystery. It's a mobile library mystery by Ian Sansom, The Case of the Missing Books. So it's part slapstick comedy, part cozy mystery. This book follows the adventures of Israel Armstrong, who is an Englishman who moves to Northern Ireland to take a job as head librarian for a small town's library. But it's only after he arrives that he finds that the council has closed the library. See the book over here, The Last Chance Library, same thing happened there. The council has closed his library, and he is to become a mobile librarian instead. And the council has also arranged lodgings for him in a local farmer's chicken coop. And it's very funny. So his local guide, Ted, arranges for the oldest bookmobile Israel has ever seen to be restored for duty. But when Israel goes looking for the books he's supposed to be delivering inside the shuttered library, he finds them all gone. Where are the books? Who's got the books? Join Israel as he attempts to solve the mystery while eccentric locals do their best to keep him in the dark. So I laughed so loud when I read this book. You've just got to read it. The Case of the Missing Books by Ian Sansom. Okay. not only do we have all these great novels about libraries and librarians, but we've got a lot of nonfiction books about libraries and librarians here. So if you want to know the history of libraries, we've got them. If you want to see pictures of libraries, we've got them. If you want essays about what libraries mean to people in communities, we've got them. So this is just a small sample of what we've got in our nonfiction section. We've got The Public Library, a photographic essay by Robert Dawson. We've got Improbable Libraries, a visual journey to the world's most unusual libraries by Alex Johnson. And I've looked through this one, and there are some very interesting libraries in here. There are libraries as art installations, and really super tiny libraries, and extremely ornate libraries, and all kinds of libraries. We've got here the history of libraries. It's called The Library, an Illustrated History by Stuart A.P. Murray, and a brand new release called The Library, a Fragile History by Andrew Pettigrew and Arthur Duvedevin. Did you know that there are 2.6 million institutional libraries in the world, including 404,487 public libraries, according to this book? And the Scott County Public Library is proud to be counted among them. So I hope you have enjoyed this journey through libraries and librarians in novel form and book form. And next time we will be doing our show on It's Raining Cats and Dogs. It'll be books and novels about dogs and cats that have dogs and cats as main characters. So we'll see you next time. And this is Jessica for Bookends. Bye.